Like and subscribe right now, or this spider is gonna crawl on your face while you're sleeping. 10 mythical creatures that may exist on Earth. Mythological creatures are more than just make-believe. They're a glimpse into how our ancestors once saw the world and the fears that filled their imaginations when they heard something go bump in the night. Every culture has their own monsters, and each one tells its own stories about what haunts or scares us. In essence, they are the manifestation of our biggest fears. The stories our ancestors left behind about the heroes who conquered mythological creatures weren't just stories, but rather they were insights into how we wished to take control over an ancient world that was often overwhelming or overpowering. And who knows, maybe these creatures still roam around us, just like they once did in the ancient times when their legends began. Welcome back to Mind Read. Let's get this list started with some old North American folklore on my own doorstep. Number 10. The Wendigo. In 1661, a group of Jesuit missionaries went to the land of the Algonquins, a tribe of Native Americans that lived along the forest regions of the Ottawa River. A previous group of the Jesuits had already traveled to this land of the Algonquins, but had fallen strangely ill. The Jesuits, coming to replace and support their sickened brethren, had heard that things had gone wrong at the mission, but what they found when they got there was worse than anything they could have imagined. Reports claimed that the missionaries they'd come to replace had turned into cannibals. It was unimaginable to the Jesuits, but the Algonquin tribe said that they knew this horror all too well. Wendigos were said to be man-eating monsters that roamed the land near the Great Lakes. Their bodies were emaciated, their ribs stuck through their thin, pale skin, and their eyes were sunken down deep into their sockets. They looked like men who had died of starvation and then walked around again after a week of decomposing in the grave. According to the legend, a Wendigo's appetite could never be filled. It would attack other men and eat their flesh, but every bite would just make them larger and hungrier until they were massive, flesh-starved giants towering over the trees. Before we move on, I've got a challenge for you that will only take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. Leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And boom, 25 years of amazing luck. Try it! It really works. Number 9. Quill Oblique. The Inuit children of the Arctic knew never to get too close to the water's edge, because it was there, underneath the ice, that Quill Oblique was waiting for them. The first thing the Inuit children were told they would hear when Quill Oblique was near would be the eerie, distant hum of its song under the sea. But if the Quill Oblique was too eager to contain itself, it would gently tap its fingers on the ice under their feet. The Quill Oblique could only be seen for the flash of an instant before it was gone. Then, it would leap out from under the water, its long, sharp fingernails sinking into the victim's flesh, and drag them forward. The unlucky victim would get one brief glimpse of its face, which was somewhat like a woman's that had turned green and bloated from decomposing under the sea. Then, the Quill Oblique would shove its victim into the great pouch it wore on its back, before diving back down into the sea. Number 8. The Minotaur. The legend of the Minotaur begins with a sacrifice of 14 Athenian children in ancient Greece. They are sent off into a labyrinth in Crete to wander for days through the dark, stone halls and feel their way along indecipherable paths. With every step, they know that they are inching closer and closer to the Minotaur. The myth goes that the people of Athens would draw lots to decide who would be sacrificed in the labyrinth. The king of Crete had demanded these sacrifices from Athenians as retribution for the death of his son at their hands, and those unlucky boys and girls were the ones who had to pay the price. The Minotaur, according to Greek legend, was the blasphemous offspring of the queen of Crete and a bull. Its real name was Asterion, but he was never allowed to live a normal life because King Minos of Crete was ashamed of what his wife had done. He was also worried about the violent rage that lived inside of the beast, so he had him locked up inside of a labyrinth to survive only on the human sacrifices that he was sent. Number 7. The Basilisk. The Basilisk was a mythological creature so venomous that a mere glance from the monster could kill. Even if you waited until it was gone, the basilisk left a trail of poison everywhere it went. According to the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, no one could kill it. If someone stabbed it with a spear, the poison would drip down onto their weapon and end their life. In Warsaw, during the year 1587, a 5-year-old girl vanished from her home. She had been out playing with a friend, and when she didn't return, her mother and maid tore through the town in search of the two. They later found the girls in an underground cellar of an abandoned house that had been in ruins for 30 years. They were lying at the bottom of the steps, both their small bodies stiff and still. The girl's mother stayed at the top of the stairs, while the maid descended the old, rickety steps down into the darkness. But before she reached the bottom, the maid suddenly stopped. She froze completely, petrified where she stood. In the town, they would later say that she was frozen because she had stared into the eyes of a basilisk, the beast that kills with a single glance. Number 6. Nyan. There was no greater horror in the villages of ancient China than a certain day once a year when the Nyan would come down from its mountain, looking for food. Nothing could stop it. The Nyan was immortal. No weapons would hurt it, and no amount of time would make it go away. All that the people of ancient China could do was board up their windows, lock their doors, hide under their beds, and pray that it left them alive. The townspeople would have to watch from their hiding spaces as the monster moved through their homes. It had a flat-shaped head, something like that of a lion's, with 2 huge horns on its head, and a set of razor-sharp teeth that jut out of its mouth. It was huge, bigger than an elephant or any other creature that walks the earth. If they were lucky, it would break through their stores of grain and eat every ounce of food they'd saved. But if they were not lucky, then the Nyan would spot one of them and pounce. It would gore them with its horns and tear through their bodies with its sharp teeth and devour them piece by piece. Anyone could be its victim. To this day, the people of China light off fireworks, bang drums, and cover their cities in red every spring festival. According to the legend, it is this celebration alone that keeps the mythological creatures from ravaging their homes. But if the people ever lose sight of their traditions and stop their celebration, then the Nyan will return. Number 5. The Chimera. From the right angle, a chimera might look, if only for a second, like nothing more than a lion. But the moment it turns, you'll see it for what it really is, with a goat's head that jutted out from the middle of its body like a bulbous, toxic growth. The tail, too, would whip out. It was green and shimmered under the light, every inch of it covered in scales. At the tip would be 2 piercing yellow eyes, above a slithering tongue that hissed, venom dripping out of the snake's mouth. This was the Chimera, a mad convolution of beasts fused into a single body. Each beast protruded out of its own end and writhed for life. According to the Greek myths, the Chimera was the twisted offspring of a monster snake named Typhon and his half-human bride. The real source of the story, though, might have been from the Hittites. Before the Greeks started telling stories of the Chimera, the Hittites were already telling stories about a chimera-like beast that had a woman's head in the place of the goat and bore a pair of eagle wings. Number 4. The Kraken. In the 18th century, the Norwegian bishop Erik Pontoppidan insisted that the Kraken was no myth. The fishermen of Norway had seen it countless times, usually on hot summer days. Our fishermen usually affirm that when they row out several miles, Pontoppidan said, that the Kraken is at the bottom of the sea. The Kraken, the largest and most ferocious creature in all the sea. When surfaced, the Kraken would stretch out as far as 10 warships side by side. It had great tentacles that could pole a ship and its crew into a watery grave below. And even if you let it be, its massive size would create such a whirlpool when it dove back down that it could suck a whole fleet underwater. There is documentation of this horrifying mythological creature haunting the seas dating back to the 13th century. It is said that the Viking hero Ovar Odr of Iceland mistook one for an island when he was nearly swallowed whole. The Kraken ranks among those mythological creatures that have stuck with us and excited our imaginations for centuries, and even made a name for itself on the movie screen. Number 3. The Grootslang. According to a South African legend, the great and terrible Grootslang was one of the first creatures the gods ever made. When man was nothing more than a primordial ooze waiting to be formed, the gods created a massive, powerful serpent, larger than an elephant and smarter than any man. This was a grave mistake. The gods were new to the art of creating life, and they didn't yet understand the dangers of making something as powerful as this great snake that could coil its body around any creature and crush the life out of it in seconds. They tried to correct it. The gods tried to exterminate every Grootslang that lived. They split the powers of the Grootslang and dispersed them across two species, the elephant and the snake. But one Grootslang managed to escape. She became the mother for a whole species of mythological creatures that the gods themselves called a deadly error. Today, it is said that the best-known Grootslang hides in a cave in Richtersveld, South Africa. There, it lies in wait for anyone foolish enough to stumble into its domain, while it passes the time by luring in elephants, crushing them, and swallowing them whole, making this one of history's most terrifying mythological creatures. Number 2. The Hydra. As horrifying as the many-headed mythological Hydra could be, most would never live long enough to see it. Every drop of blood coursing through its body was filled with so much venom that it breathed poison. A noxious air filled its lair, and anyone who inhaled it would fill their lungs with an acid that ate them from the inside out. Should anyone make it through the deadly air in the lair, they would soon find themselves staring into the eyes of an enormous dragon-like creature with 9 heads. No matter what anyone did to the Hydra, it could never be killed. If anyone managed to remove one of this mythological creature's heads, 2 more would grow in its place. The only way to prevent the regrowth of the head was to sear it with a flame, but even then, its final head was completely immortal. The Hydra could never die. Slaughtering the Hydra was the second trial of Hercules. He had his nephew Iolaus help him, using a firebrand to cauterize its severed necks and to keep them from growing back. When all that was left was its original, immortal head, he then used a magical sword gifted to him by the goddess Athena to chop it off. Thank you, Hercules! Before we unveil number 1, we would like to thank Carolyn Redmond from the US for sending us today's thumbnail for the video. So, without further delays, number 1. Pulgasari. North Korea has immortalized Pulgasari as the star of their greatest propaganda film. Under the orders of Kim Jong-il, the government kidnapped 2 Korean directors to make the film, a Godzilla-like monster movie with a communist message. In the original legend, Pulgasari, or sometimes called Bulgasari, was created by a Buddhist monk. When an evil governor ordered every Buddhist monk to be sent to prison, he hid in his sister's wall closet. To pass the time in hiding, he made a little creature out of steamed rice grains. To his shock, it came to life, and, seeing it hungry, the kindly monk fed it the only thing he could find: steel needles. Legend says that the monster kept devouring steel until he grew bigger than buildings and started to terrorize the city. The governor sent his army, but nothing could kill the beast, and it kept on its rampage until it destroyed the entire city. Where it went after that, nobody knows.